welcome to the Franaz debate. So what if I told you the greatest secret of Western democracy is that it was designed by people who, well, absolutely despised human nature?
I mean, that is a pretty bold claim to start us off with.
It is, right? But think about when engineers design a brand new sports car. Their singular focus is usually to make it, as fast and sleek as possible. They strip away excess weight, streamline the aerodynamics, and maximize the engine's power.
Yeah, they want nothing getting in the way of forward motion. It is just the pursuit of pure, unadulterated efficiency.
Exactly. But then the safety inspectors step into the factory. They look at this beautiful, frictionless machine and demand heavy steel roll cages, complex airbag systems, and massive, heavy braking mechanisms.
Oh, and the engineers are furious, I imagine.
Oh, totally furious. Because these safety features ruin the sleek design. They add massive amounts of weight and they deliberately slow the car down.
Right, but the inspectors know a single mistake by the driver at 200 miles an hour doesn't just mean a dented bumper. It means a catastrophic, fiery disaster. The driver is fallible.
And that tension, that push and pull between sleek, dangerous speed and heavy, frustrating safety brings us directly to our topic today. We are exploring the hidden mechanics of government.
Which is such an interesting way to frame it.
It really is. And I want to emphasize our discussion is inspired by a really fascinating original video. It was created entirely by the creator themselves. Every metaphor and visual concept we are discussing today is a brilliant design by Hot Hot Hut.
Yes, the visuals are incredible.
They are. And the core idea for Hot Hut Hut is that we spend so much time searching for the perfect leader when we should actually be terrified of what absolute power does to the human mind.
The framing they use for this is just striking. The video points to the One Ring from J.R.R. Tolkien's universe to represent absolute unchecked power.
Right, Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. And the fundamental rule of the ring is that it must never be worn. It does not matter how pure or noble the person holding it is. The sheer force of that power will eventually twist them to a monster, just like Sauron or Gollum.
So to prevent the ring from being worn, democracy shatters that power into separate pieces. It takes the ability to make laws, enforce those laws, and judge those laws, and hands them to completely different groups of people.
It chains a bunch of imperfect sinners together.
That is exactly it. And I look at this premise, and to me, it perfectly captures why democracy survives. By shattering power, the system willingly trades dangerous speed for long-term survival. It builds the heavy roll cage to create a safe, livable world.
Well, history already proved the flawless, perfect saint is a myth. I am certainly not arguing we should hand the One Ring to a dictator.
Good, I am glad we agree on that.
We definitely agreed there. But my concern is with the specific mechanism this design advocates. Turning the branches of government into what the video calls deadly rivals fighting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, well, that creates a fatal flaw of its own.
How so?
A paralyzed system struggling to solve real, urgent problems might not be tyrannical, but it still fails the citizens it is supposed to protect. When speed is a matter of survival, a shattered, gridlocked system is a massive liability.
You see that gridlock as a liability. But let's dive into the mechanics of how that system actually operates. The design by Hot Hut Huts uses a brilliant computer network analogy to explain this.
Ah, the single server analogy.
Yes. A dictatorship operates like a single server. In a single service setup, there is zero friction. When you give one person all the power, they can process commands instantly.
Right. They can decree that a new hospital be built in 5 days, and it just happens.
Exactly. Or rewrite the tax code overnight.
It is incredibly efficient. The commands are executed without any structural resistance at all.
Right. Until a virus enters that single server. When a dictator becomes corrupt or simply loses their mind, there is no backup system.
The virus infects the entire network instantaneously.
And the whole country collapses in flames. The multi-channel system, meaning the separation of powers, functions by deliberately putting firewalls between the servers.
So slowing it down on purpose.
Precisely. If the executive branch catches a virus, like, say, a leader deciding to unilaterally shut down the press, the legislative branch cuts off their funding. The judicial branch issues an injunction making the action illegal. Yes, the system pays a heavy price in speed.
A very heavy price. It takes years of debate just to pass a basic budget sometimes.
True, but when the stakes are the freedom and lives of millions of people, that frustratingly slow speed is a feature, not a bug.
Okay, but the firewall mechanism only makes sense if we assume the threat comes from inside the machine. You talk about viruses as if the only danger to a country's survival is its own government turning evil.
Well, tyranny is the ultimate danger.
It is a danger, sure. But what about external viruses? What happens when a massive global emergency hits? Imagine a sudden economic collapse or a devastating natural disaster.
Those are valid concerns.
They require an immediate, massive, unified response. If your multi-channel system is busy arguing with the legislature refusing to release emergency funds because they are fighting with the executive over unrelated politics, the fire outside is burning the house down while the family bickers in the living room.
That is a colorful way to put it.
I mean, deliberately slowing things down is fine for everyday choices, like debating the location of a new public park. But being entirely incapable of rapid movement can absolutely cause a fatal crash of its own.
See, you are assuming that rapid action in a crisis is inherently the correct action.
Usually it is, when time is of the essence.
But look at the mechanics of panic. When governments move with unchecked speed during a crisis, they bypass evidence gathering, they bypass debate. They frequently make terrible, destructive mistakes, like stripping away civil liberties or throwing billions of dollars at a solution that actually makes the problem worse.
That can happen, yes.
The delay caused by these three branches checking each other forces the system to slow down and actually process data. It forces the government to find a solution that a broad majority of the country can actually stomach.
Even if it takes weeks.
Even if it takes weeks. A slow, heavily debated response that respects human rights is vastly superior to a lightning-fast response that accidentally destroys the very society it is trying to protect.
The theory of thoughtful debate sounds wonderful, but let's look at the actual language the creator uses. The idea for hot-hot-hot-hot describes the three branches as deadly rivals forced to fight 24/7.
Right. Deadly rivals.
Think about the reality of those words. Can a truly livable, functioning world actually be built by people who are locked in constant, bitter existential conflict?
I argue that it can.
But good government at its core requires a baseline of teamwork and cooperation to execute complex tasks. If you design a system where every participant is structurally assumed to be an enemy, you breed a permanent culture of suspicion.
Which keeps them honest.
Or it just means the politicians spend all their energy setting traps for each other, investigating each other, and trying to win the next election, rather than actually serving the public.
That friction is exactly what the creators of democracy intended, though. You are asking if good government requires teamwork. I am arguing that in this multi-channel design, the rivalry itself is the teamwork.
Antagonism as a form of cooperation. You will have to explain the mechanics of how people actively trying to destroy each other's agendas results in teamwork.
Okay, think about the physiological mechanics of the human body. When you want to carefully lift a glass of water to your mouth, your bicep muscle contracts. It pulls your forearm upward.
Right, basic anatomy.
But your triceps muscle, the one on the back of your arm, it doesn't just go limp. It actively resists. It pulls in the exact opposite direction.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Those two muscles are physically fighting each other. They are rivals. But that constant opposing tension is the very mechanism that allows your arm to move smoothly and stop exactly at your lips.
So the resistance creates control.
Exactly. If your triceps disagreed to cooperate and pull in the same direction as your bicep, your arm would violently snap upward and smash the glass into your face.
Ouch, yeah, that would be bad.
Very bad. In a democracy, institutional game theory works the exact same way. Ambition is made to counteract ambition. The constant conflict prevents any single group from grabbing the one ring. The tension is keeping the citizens safe.
The muscle analogy is clever, but it breaks down when we look at how this system behaves in the real world.
Why is that?
Because when muscles pull against each other in a healthy body, that tension is coordinated by a central nervous system to achieve a specific goal, like lifting the glass.
Sure.
But what we actually see in this multi-channel system of separated powers is not smooth, coordinated movement. It is total paralysis.
I would call it caution.
I call it a tremor. The bicep pulls, the triceps pulls equally hard, and the arm just stays stuck, trembling in midair, completely unable to pick up the glass.
I think you are exaggerating the paralysis.
Am I? When the legislature and the executive are controlled by opposing factions, they do not just watch each other to prevent tyranny. They actively sabotage the basic functions of the state.
They debate the functions.
They refuse to pass mandatory budgets. They shut down the entire government, halting paychecks for millions of workers. That is not a healthy tension keeping us safe from Sauron. That is a broken machine.
But even if we accept your gridlock argument, you are assuming the ultimate goal of the government is forward momentum. What if the primary goal is simply avoiding a catastrophic crash?
A government shutdown is a crash, though.
It is a frustrating failure of execution, I concede that. But it is fundamentally not a dictatorship. I will gladly take a trembling, gridlocked arm over an arm controlled by a tyrant.
Well, that is a fair point.
And this brings us to another incredible visual. I want to stress again, this is a unique design by Ho Het Ho Tot. The video compares the mechanics of democracy to the physical design of highway lanes. It calls this structure the true Pareto optimum.
Right, a Pareto optimum. That is a fascinating economic and mathematical concept.
It really is.
In simple terms, it means you have reached a state of balance where it is physically impossible to make any one variable better without automatically making another variable worse. You have hit the absolute physical limit of the system based on its constraints.
Precisely. And in the political science context of this video, the constraints are the fundamental flaws of human nature. We are trading exact units of government efficiency for exact units of safety from tyranny.
The highway analogy, right?
Yes. Think about a wide-open highway with absolutely no lanes painted on it. Everyone can drive wherever they want, at whatever speed they want. It feels incredibly free, and it is incredibly fast.
Total forward momentum.
Absolute momentum, right up until the moment two cars hit each other head-on at 80 miles an hour. So what do the engineers do?
They paint strict lines on the road.
And they install massive concrete barriers between the northbound and southbound traffic. They force drivers to stay in a designated lane. It drastically restricts their freedom.
It severely slows them down.
But it physically prevents a total fiery disaster. That concrete barrier is the separation of powers. You literally cannot increase the speed of the traffic without exponentially increasing the risk of a fatal collision.
Okay, the concrete barriers absolutely prevent head-on crashes, and avoiding tyranny is the most important baseline. I agree there.
Thank you.
But extending your highway analogy exposes the flaw in relying entirely on chained sinners. The cars on a highway still need to be moving forward to reach their destinations.
They are moving just safely.
Are they? If the three branches of government are just deadly rivals, constantly slamming on their brakes, swerving into the concrete barriers, and blocking the lanes just to prove a point to the other drivers, you cause a permanent massive traffic jam.
Traffic jams are part of driving.
Sure, nobody is dying in a fiery collision, but nobody is getting to work either. People are just sitting in their cars, burning gas, honking their horns, and going absolutely nowhere.
It is a necessary evil.
A government cannot just exist to not be tyrannical. It has to actually deliver services. It has to fix the roads, maintain the power grid, and educate the next generation. If the system is nothing but a permanent traffic jam of chained sinners fighting over inches of asphalt, the citizens suffer deeply.
The frustration of sitting in that traffic jam is real. And, it is undeniably annoying. You sit there gripping the steering wheel, wishing you could just attach wings to your car and fly over the mess.
Exactly.
But that frustration is the exact price we pay to avoid the head-on collision. The core idea for Hottie Hot Hut emphasizes that we cannot magically wish away human imperfection.
We definitely cannot do that.
Right. If you remove the concrete barriers on the highway to clear the political gridlock and let the cars weave freely, you are inviting death. If you remove the checks and balances in government to streamline the passing of laws, you are inviting tyranny. Eventually, the one ring will be worn.
I do not disagree that the ring itself is the poison. Tolkien's warning is clear, The sheer magnitude of absolute power corrupts the human mind, regardless of the wearer's initial good intentions.
It is inevitable.
But I think we have to ask ourselves if it is possible to separate power without structurally mandating that the branches act as deadly rivals. Can we have separate highway lanes without the drivers actively trying to run each other off the road?
That implies relying on good behavior.
Any system, no matter how brilliantly engineered, relies on more than just its written rules. It relies on a basic, fundamental level of good faith among the human beings operating the machinery.
I have to disagree there.
Hear me out. If the people running the government entirely lose trust in the system, if the rivalry becomes so deadly that they stop respecting the concrete barriers altogether, the multi-channel system breaks down anyway. You cannot permanently engineer out the human element through pure friction.
Well, you cannot remove the human element, but you can build a system that realistically expects humans to act like humans rather than foolishly expecting them to act like angels.
Fair point.
Relying on good faith is exactly the trap democracy was designed to avoid. It assumes bad faith. It assumes greed, ambition, and the desperate desire for control.
It is a very cynical view.
It is pragmatic. By pitting those negative traits directly against each other, the machinery neutralizes them. You don't need the drivers on the highway to love each other. You just need the concrete barrier to be physically strong enough to keep them apart.
But the barriers themselves are made by humans, the courts, the written laws, the Constitution. These are not magical, indestructible force fields.
They are robust institutions, though.
They are concepts upheld by the collective agreement of society. When the institutional gain theory you described pushes the bicep and triceps to pull so hard that the muscle literally tears, the barrier crumbles.
And yet, historically, those concrete barriers have held back the worst impulses of humanity, far better than any system that relied on the benevolence of a single powerful leader. We are left with a brutal, unavoidable trade-off, which the design by captures perfectly.
It is a profound trade-off, for sure. So let us summarize exactly what we covered today so it is perfectly clear for everyone.
Good idea. Let's go step by step. First, we reviewed the idea for that absolute power is like the One Ring. It corrupts anyone, even good people.
Right. And second, you argued that democracy solves this by breaking power into three parts: the legislature, executive, and judiciary, keeping us safe by making them watch each other.
Exactly. It sacrifices speed for survival.
And then for the third point, I summarized the worry that making these three parts fight 24/7 might make the government too slow, like a traffic jam, especially when we need fast action in emergencies.
That is a great summary. So we are forcing ourselves to choose between two different types of risk. The fast, terrifying risk of a single server, a ruler, who can build a hospital in a week but can also become a monster overnight.
Right. Versus the slow, grinding risk of a shattered, chained system that struggles to move forward but physically blocks tyranny through constant, bitter rivalry.
Exactly.
What stands out to me most from this entire conceptual framework is its brutal honesty. The genius of the design isn't just in its mechanics, but in its absolute refusal to romanticize who we are.
Right. It looks at our inherent flaws, our ambition, our selfishness, our susceptibility to corruption, not as unfortunate traits to be wished away, but as the very building blocks of the government's machinery itself.
It builds the machine out of our flaws.
We began this conversation talking about engineers forced to ruin their sleek, beautiful sports car by adding heavy roll cages and frustrating seatbelts. Looking at a democratic government is exactly like looking at that modified, weighed-down car.
It is not pretty.
It is definitely not pretty. It is often loud, clunky, and agonizingly slow to maneuver. But when you are driving on the incredibly dangerous road of human history, when you are navigating the absolute certainty of human fallibility, those ugly, heavy safety features are the only things preventing a fatal crash.
Ultimately, every society has to decide for itself if the slow, frustrating safety of chained sinners is worth the price.
Think carefully the next time you find yourself wishing the government would just bypass the rules and move a little faster to solve a problem. It might just be the heavy brakes of that system that are saving your life.
The balance between granting power to solve problems and chaining power to prevent tyranny is a tension that never truly resolves. It is a debate every generation must actively navigate. There is definitely more to explore here.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack this incredible perspective today.